Good morning. Protagoras, day 12. He agreed, though most reluctantly. Then must not temperance and wisdom be the same, just as earlier justice and holiness turned out to be much the same? Come now, Protagoras, we must not falter, but complete our inquiry. Do you think that a man who commits an injustice acts temperately in committing it? For my part, I should be ashamed to agree to that, he replied. Of course, many people do. Well, shall I direct my argument against them or against you? If you wish, he said, argue first against the proposition of the many. It is all the same to me, said I, provided you make the replies, whether it is your own opinion or not. Okay, so this is a fun game to play. Seeing if you can take on the perspective of the many and argue their case on behalf of them. This is actually, I think, a very sophist thing to do, to argue both sides equally well. But why are you arguing both sides? Are you arguing both sides to win the day, to win recognition? Or are you arguing both sides so that you can truly understand both sides, and maybe by understanding both sides come to as close as possible to the most edifying view that you can come to. It is the argument itself that I wish to probe, though it may turn out that both I who question and you who answer are equally under scrutiny. Oh, this is beautiful. It is the argument itself that I wish to probe, though it might turn out that both I who question and you who answer are equally under scrutiny. It may turn out that both you who answer and I who question are equally under scrutiny. At first, Protagoras began to make difficulties, alleging that it would be hard to conduct a discussion on these terms, but in the end he agreed to answer. Good, said I. Now let us start from the beginning. You believe that some people show temperance in doing wrong. Let us start from the beginning. Isn't there an Alice in Wonderland quote? Begin at the beginning. I'm curious now. Alice in Wonderland. Alice in Wonderland. Begin at the beginning quote. Begin at the beginning, the king said gravely, and go on till you come to the end. Then stop. Only in dialectic there is no end. You believe that some people show temperance in doing wrong? We will suppose so, he said. We will suppose so, he said. And to show temperance is to show good sense. Yes. Which means that in doing wrong they have planned well. So be it. If their wrongdoing is successful or unsuccessful, it is successful. You agree that some things are good? Yes? And do you mean by good those which are beneficial to men? Not only those, he said, even if they are not beneficial to me, I still call them good. Okay, so many things come to mind. So I was doing a supervillain project at a certain time years ago. And I discovered that the main quality of a supervillain, even supervillains like the Joker, who pretends to think that there's all is chaos and there goes no planning. The main thing of a supervillain is planning. It's all about planning. So that's why there aren't that many supervillains, because it's boring. But planning is... Which means that doing wrong they have planned well. Yes. And okay, and then the other thing that... do you mean by good those things which are beneficial to men? Not only those, he said, even if they are not beneficial to me, I still call them good, which is also really important. Anthropocentric we've become. We have probably always been. Only now maybe we don't have to be anymore in order to survive. We have to quite be the opposite maybe in order to survive. But we do have a tendency to call good that which is beneficial to us, and then even individually. So I'm reading this book, not very far in, only chapter 2, and it was on Spinoza, and it's been recommended by Verweke. So it was not a very optimistic view of Spinoza, but a very well read and deeply studied view of Spinoza, I think. And it ends with claiming that Spinoza's ethics is pretty self-centered. So, but this conversion does not entail self-transcendence. It involves becoming more intelligently self-centered. I think that is the greatest risk in the philosophical world, the philosophical life. That in the end it's just about becoming more intelligently self-centered and not really transcending yourself. Self-transcendence always requires a really big sacrifice. And we prefer gaining and getting knowledge, getting understanding, getting insight and wisdom. Easily become a very, very self-centered project. Okay. Which is probably not what Plato had in mind. Well, maybe. At this point, I thought Protagoras beginning to bristle, ready for a quarrel and preparing to do battle with his answers. Seeing this, I became more cautious and proceeded gently with my questioning. Do you mean things which are beneficial to no human being? Or things that are not beneficial at all? Do you call them good also? Ooh, and then Protagoras says, of course not, he said. But I know plenty of things, foods, drinks, drugs, and many others, which are harmful to men, and others which are beneficial, and others again which, so far as men are concerned, are neither, but are harmful or beneficial to horses, and others only to cattle or dogs. Some have no effect on animals, but only on trees, and some again are good for the roots of trees, but injurious to the young growth. growth. Manure, for instance, is good for all plants when applied to their roots, but utterly destructive if put on the shoots or young branches. Or take olive oil. It is very bad for plants and most inimical to the hair of all animals, except man. Inimical. I don't know what inimical means, but I do know olive oil is really good for human hair. It's good for everything. Although coconut oil is better. But don't tell Athena that I said that. Whereas men find it service both to the hair and to the rest of their body. So I mean, inimical is a bad thing. So diverse and multiform is goodness that even with us the same thing is good when applied externally, but deadly when taken internally. Thus all doctors forbid the sick to use oil in preparing their food, except in the very smallest quantities, just enough to counteract the disagreeable smell which food and sauces may have for them. The audience vigorously applauded his speech. Then said I, so I wonder if Socrates here, he noticed that Protagoras was getting a bit bristled, and if he asked a question that he knew would elicit applause, to get Protagoras' spirit up again. Then said I, I'm a forgetful sort of man, Protagoras, and if someone speaks at length, I lose the thread of an argument. If I were a little deaf, you would recognize the necessity of raising your voice if you wanted to talk to me. So now, since you find me forgetful, cut down your answers and make them shorter if I am to follow you. What do you mean by make my answers short? Am I to make them shorter than the subject demands? Of course not. As long as is necessary, then. Yes. As long as I think necessary, or you. What they told me, I answered, is that you have the gift both of speaking yourself and of teaching others to speak, just as you prefer, either at length, so that you never run dry, or so shortly that no one could beat you for brevity. If then you are going to talk to me, please use the second method and be brief. Okay, so I have no idea, because Socrates does this everywhere. He pretends to be forgetful, and then he quotes very long passages from Homer. And he remembers people's words so that he can say, oh, but you said this, like, isn't that contradicting to what you're saying now? It's still very long, Protagoras. And so I imagine Protagoras went for the first option. Sorry about that. Okay, that was annoying. I have to keep my phone on because I'm waiting for a call to action. But I put it off now because I'm almost done. So I don't know why Socrates does this brevity game. I'm curious. I'm really curious. Would like someone to tell me someday. Have a good day.